The twin suns were setting over New Laramie. June wiped sweat from his face as he finished putting his horses in the barn. It had been a long day. His back hurt, but he smiled as he patted Sook, his favorite horse. The big Appaloosa mare nudged his pocket, looking for treats. Okay, June said, pulling out a cube of pressed sugar. Last one for today. Sook's lips gently took the treat. Her brown eyes looked at June with what he swore was thanks. These horses were smarter than the old Earth horses. The scientists had made them that way when they made New Laramie. June locked the barn and walked to his house. It was built of wood and stone, like the old houses back on Earth hundreds of years ago. But inside, it had all the new tech a man could need. Not that June used much of it. He liked the simple life. His boots made the wooden steps creak as he climbed to his porch. The sky was turning dark purple now. Stars were coming out, bright and clear. No clouds tonight. June sat in his old chair and poured a cup of whiskey. The bottle was real glass, not plastic. A gift from town for helping with last year's big roundup. Another day gone, he said to no one. At 35, June had been alone on this ranch for 7 years. He didn't mind it much. The horses were good company. Better than most people who asked too many questions about why a man would want to live so far from town. He drank his whiskey and looked up at the stars. So many of them had people now. Earth people, moving out, making new homes. New Laramie was just one small dot in the big map of where humans had gone. June wondered sometimes what was out there beyond the known stars. Other people, other things. His thoughts stopped when he saw something bright move across the sky. Not a normal shooting star. This was bigger, brighter. It left a trail of fire. What the hell? June stood up, his drink forgotten. The light got brighter. It was coming down, not passing by. Coming down here. The thing. A ship, he guessed, broke into pieces high up. Most of the parts went dark or burned away. But one piece, still glowing hot, came down fast. It hit somewhere in the hills past his north field. The ground shook when it hit. A small flash lit up the night, then darkness again. June didn't wait. He ran back to the barn, waking Sook. Sorry girl, need you again. He threw on her saddle and jumped up. They rode fast across his land toward where the light had gone down. It took 20 minutes to find it. A metal pod, about the size of his bathroom, was half buried in the dirt. Steam rose from the hot metal. The ground around it was black and burned. Small fires burned in the dry grass nearby. June tied Sook to a tree a safe distance away. He put out the grass fires with dirt and his jacket. When he was sure nothing else would burn, he went closer to the pod. It wasn't like any ship he'd seen before. Not a standard escape pod from the colonial ships. This was something else. The metal had strange marks on it. The shape was all wrong, more like an egg than the boxes humans used. A soft hiss made him jump back. A line appeared in the metal, glowing slightly. The pod was opening. June put his hand on his gun. He didn't pull it out, but he wanted to be ready. The pod split open wider. Inside was dark at first. Then he saw her. A woman. At least she looked mostly like a woman. Her skin was pale blue in the moonlight. Her face was almost human, but her eyes were larger, and her ears came to slight points. She was wearing some kind of uniform, torn and burned in places. She wasn't moving. Blood, dark purple blood, ran from a cut on her head. June stood there for a long moment, his heart beating fast. Then he did what any decent man would do. He reached into the pod to help. The woman's eyes snapped open. They glowed slightly in the dark, like a cat's eyes. She looked right at June and said something in a language he had never heard before. Then she passed out again. June didn't know what to do with an alien in his house, but he couldn't leave her in that broken pod. So he had carried her home, put her on his bed, and cleaned the cut on her head. The purple blood had dried quickly. Now he just waited. 3 hours passed. June sat in a chair by the bed, fighting sleep. He jumped when the alien woman suddenly sat up. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice clear as day. Perfect English. June blinked in surprise. "You speak our language." The woman touched a small device on her neck. Universal translator. Standard equipment for research teams. She looked around the room, eyes wide. "Is this a human dwelling?" "This is my house. My ranch house. On New Laramie." June stayed in his chair, giving her space. "I'm Jum Kim." The woman nodded slowly. "I am Minji, research specialist, 3rd class. Juan Biological Survey." June noticed she didn't give a last name. "Are you? Okay. You had a bad cut." Minji touched her head where the wound had been. It was already healing, just a faint purple line now. "Our bodies heal quickly. Thank you for your assistance." She tried to stand but wobbled. June moved to help her, but she held up a hand to stop him. "I'm fine. Just need a moment." She sat back on the bed. "My ship. Did you see a larger vessel?" "No, just your pod thing. It broke off from something bigger that flew over. The rest kept going or burned up." Minji's face fell. "Then they continued without me." As expected. She pulled out a small device from her pocket and tapped it. A hologram appeared, showing star charts Jun didn't understand. "Where exactly is this planet in human space?" "We're on the outer rim. 3 weeks by fast ship to Earth." Minji nodded and put the device away. "May I have water?" Jun went to the kitchen and brought back a glass. She sniffed it before drinking. "Our species are similar," she said. "I can consume most human foods and water." June sat down again. "What were you doing near our planet?" "Research. The Huan study developing civilizations." She looked out the window at the night sky. "Your colony worlds are of particular interest." "Why's that?" "Humans adapt quickly. You reshape worlds to suit you instead of changing yourselves to suit the worlds. It's unusual." June noticed Minji was sweating despite the cool room. "Are you sure you're okay?" She wiped her forehead. "Yes, just my body adjusting to your planet's conditions." But she was checking a small device on her wrist, looking worried at whatever it showed her. "Will your people come back for you?" June asked. "Eventually, when they complete the survey route. Perhaps 3 of your months." 3 months. Jun scratched his head. "Well, I guess you can stay here if you need to. Got plenty of room." Minji looked at him with those strange, large eyes. "That is very kind. Not what I expected from humans." "What did you expect?" "Our records show humans can be territorial and suspicious of outsiders." June shrugged. "Some are. I just try to be decent." The next morning, June woke up on his couch. He'd given Minji his bed. He smelled food cooking and found her in his kitchen, frying eggs. "I hope this is acceptable," she said. "I study your food storage and cooking methods." "You didn't have to cook." "I wish to contribute while I am here." She put eggs on 2 plates. "I must warn you, Jun Kim. My presence may bring complications." "What kind of complications?" Before she could answer, she suddenly dropped a plate. It shattered on the floor. Minji's face flushed a deeper blue, and she steadied herself against the counter. "Are you sick?" June asked, moving toward her. "Not sick. Just." She took a deep breath. "There are things about Huan biology I should explain, but not yet. First, tell me about your horses. I saw them from the window. They are beautiful animals." June could tell she was changing the subject, but he didn't push. "Sure. Want to meet them after breakfast?" Minji smiled, showing teeth that were just a bit too sharp to be human. "I would like that very much." A week passed. Minji learned about the ranch. June showed her how to feed the horses, clean the stalls, and even how to ride a little. She was a fast learner. But something was wrong. June could see it. Minji's skin would get hot, then cold. Sometimes she would stare at him when she thought he wasn't looking. She kept checking that device on her wrist, and each time she looked more worried. One evening, they were in the barn. June was showing Minji how to brush Sook. The big horse stood still, enjoying the attention. "You're good with her," June said. "She doesn't usually like strangers." Minji smiled. Animals can sense things about people that people cannot see in each other. Suddenly, Sook moved sideways, bumping into a post. A shelf above them shook, and tools began to fall. Without thinking, June pushed Minji away from the falling tools. They fell to the ground together, June on top of Minji. For a moment, they just stayed there, faces close. Minji's eyes were wide. Her skin felt very hot. "Are you okay?" June asked, getting up quickly. Minji didn't answer. She stood up, her hands shaking. Her face was a darker blue than normal. "I need to. I should go inside." She turned and ran from the barn. June found her later sitting on the porch, looking at the stars. Her hands were still shaking. Sweat covered her face. "All right," June said, sitting across from her. "Time to tell me what's wrong. Are you sick? Is it something in our air?" Minji took a deep breath. "I was not fully honest with you, Jum Kim. I did not just fall from my ship by accident." "You left on purpose." She nodded. "I fled. I had to." "From what?" Minji looked down at her hands. "My species, the Huan, have a biological cycle. Every 7 years, adult Huan go through what we call the burning. It is a mating time." June's eyes widened as he began to understand. "Our bodies change," she continued. "We must find a compatible mate or face severe pain, even possible death. There are medicines to help, but they must be given early. I missed the deadline." "Why would you do that?" Minji looked away. "On the research ship, I would have been sedated for weeks, put in stasis until it passed. I've been through it before. The drugs have bad side effects, but this time, my scans showed something unusual." "What?" "Your species, humans, your biology shares certain compatible elements with one." She finally looked at June. "I wanted to test my theory. It was not approved by my superiors." June sat back in his chair. "So you're saying?" "I am in the early stages of the burning. It will get worse. Much worse. That is why I keep checking my readings." She held up her wrist device. "My body chemistry is changing. In about 2 weeks, I will reach the peak phase." "And what happens then?" "Without a compatible mate." She paused. "Severe pain. Possible organ failure." June didn't know what to say. "Can you? I mean, is there anything that can help? I have some medicine that will ease symptoms, but not enough." "I thought perhaps, but it was a foolish risk." Minji stood up. "I should not have involved you in this. I will gather my things and return to my pod. Perhaps I can send a distress signal." "Your pod is broken. You'd die out there." "I may die here as well." June shook his head. "No, there has to be another way." Minji walked to the edge of the porch. "There is only one other possibility, but I cannot ask it of you. It would not be right." June stood up and walked to her side. "Ask what?" Minji turned to him, her eyes glowing in the dark. "The only way to survive the burning is to mate with a compatible partner. My scans suggest humans might be compatible enough, but I have no right to ask this of you. You have already shown me more kindness than I expected." A silence fell between them. The only sound was the night wind and distant horses. "We'll figure something out," June finally said. "I'm not letting you die on my ranch." Minji gave a small smile. "You are a strange human, June Kim, but a good one." The next few days were strange for both of them. They tried to act normal, but the truth hung in the air between them. June decided the best thing was to keep busy and teach Minji about life on the ranch. "Today you learned to ride for real," June said one morning. They stood in the corral with Sook and a smaller, gentle horse named Pebble. I'm not sure, Minji said. They're so big. Pebble is the calmest horse I have. He's perfect for beginners. Jun helped her into the saddle. Just sit straight, hold the reins loose, and let him feel you're not afraid. Minji nodded and took a deep breath. Jun led Pebble around the corral slowly. After a few minutes, Minji began to relax. That's it, Jun said. You're doing great. By the end of the day, Minji was riding by herself, slow but steady. Her smile was the biggest Jun had seen. This is amazing, she called as she completed a full circle of the corral. I understand now why humans love these animals. That night, they sat by a fire outside. The temperature had dropped, and the stars filled the sky. Tell me about your world, Jun said. Minji looked up at the stars. One Prime is larger than Earth. 3 big oceans, 5 continents, more mountains, less flat land. She pointed to a section of sky. It's that way, about 40 light years. What's it like there? Your cities and such. Our cities are built into nature, not on top of it. Buildings grow from special trees we guide into shades. We live much longer than humans, about 200 years. We have technology, but we prefer to change ourselves to fit our worlds, not change worlds to fit us. Except for the burning, Jun said quietly. Minji's face darkened. Yes, that we cannot change. It is deep in our biology. What about family? Do your people marry like humans? We have pair bonds, but they're not always permanent. Some bond for life, others for just a few years. She looked at Jun. What about you? Why do you live alone so far from other humans? Jun poked the fire with a stick. I was married once, back on Earth. It didn't work out. She wanted city life. I wanted space and quiet. When the new Laramie settlement opened, I signed up. Been here 7 years now. Don't you get lonely? Jun shrugged. Got my horses. Neighbors about 10 miles that way. He pointed. I go to town every few weeks for supplies. On Earth, what were you? A cowboy. Jun laughed. Not exactly. Cowboys are mostly from old stories now. But I did work on a big ranch in Texas. Learned about horses there. I've studied your cowboy stories, Minji said. Men who lived by their own rules on the frontier. Very romantic. Reality was probably less romantic. Lot of hard work, danger, and dirt. They fell silent, watching the fire. Jun noticed Minji was shivering despite the fire's heat. You okay? He asked. Just the burning. Getting stronger. She rubbed her arms. The temperature changes are getting worse. Without thinking, Jun moved closer and put his arm around her shoulders. Minji stiffened at first, then relaxed against him. Your body temperature is so steady, she said. It's soothing. They sat like that for a while, watching the flames. Tomorrow I will show you how we use the horses to move cattle, Jun said, trying to sound normal. I'd like that. Minji's voice was soft. Later, as they walked back to the house, Minji stopped suddenly and looked at Jun. Thank you, she said, for not being afraid of me. Many species would fear a Wan in my condition. Should I be afraid? Minji's eyes glowed in the dark, perhaps a little. The burning affects our minds too, as it gets worse. Makes us more direct about what we want. And what do you want? Jun asked, his voice low. Minji just looked at him, then turned and walked into the house. 3 more days passed. Jun woke up early to check the weather sensors. The screen showed bad news. A big dust storm was coming, the kind that hit New Laramie a few times each year. We need to get ready, he told Minji at breakfast. Storm's coming tonight. A bad one. Minji looked worried. How bad? Winds over 100 miles per hour. Lots of dust. We'll lose power, comms, everything. Could last 2-3 days. They spent the day getting ready. Jun moved the horses into the strong inner barn. They stored extra water, charged all batteries, and closed the special storm shutters on all windows. By late afternoon, the sky turned a strange yellow-brown. The wind began to pick up. Last big storm took down the comm tower in town, Jun said as they finished preparations. No way to call for help until it passes. Minji sat down suddenly, her face twisted in pain. What's wrong? Jun rushed to her side. The burning, she gasped. It's getting worse faster than I expected. She showed him her wrist device. The screen flashed red symbols Jun couldn't read. What does it say? I'm entering the critical phase. Her hand shook. The medicine isn't working anymore. Outside, the wind howled louder. Dust began to hit the house like tiny bullets. Come on, Jun said, helping her up. Let's get you to bed. Maybe rest will help. He helped Minji to the bedroom. Her skin was burning hot, then suddenly ice cold. She shivered violently. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't want it to be like this. Like what? Talk to me, Minji. She looked at him, her eyes glowing brighter than ever. I'm dying, Jun. Without completing the cycle, my organs will begin to fail within hours. The lights flickered, then went out. The emergency lamps came on, casting the room in a soft blue glow. There has to be something we can do. Jun felt helpless. More medicine. Used it all. Minji closed her eyes tight against another wave of pain. There's only one way. But I can't ask that of you. Ask me what? Jun took her hand. It burned against his skin. Minji opened her eyes. They locked with his. My body needs to complete the mating cycle with a compatible partner. She touched his face with her other hand. The scans show you are compatible enough. But I have no right to ask this of you. Jun didn't speak for a moment. The storm outside grew louder, shaking the house. You're not asking, he finally said. I'm offering. Minji shook her head. You don't understand. The burning is intense. I would not be gentle. I'm tougher than I look. A small smile touched her lips despite her pain. I believe you are. Another wave of pain hit her. She gripped Jun's hand so tight he winced. If we do this, she gasped when the pain eased, there are things you need to know. Huan mating is different from human mating. How different? Before she could answer, the house shook with a massive gust of wind. Something crashed outside. The barn roof. Jun jumped up. I need to check the horses. Go, Minji said. I'll be okay for a few minutes. Jun ran outside, fighting against the wind and dust. He made it to the barn and found part of the roof damaged, but the horses were safe in the intersection. When he returned to the house, he was covered in dust. Minji was not in bed. He found her in the living room, barely standing, holding onto a chair for support. You should be in bed, he said. Minji looked at him, her eyes now glowing like blue fire. Her voice was different, deeper, when she spoke. Jun Kim, she said, stepping toward him with shaking legs. Let me ride you like a pony. The storm raged outside. Inside, a different kind of storm had passed. Jun lay on his bed, breathing hard. Beside him, Minji's blue skin glowed faintly in the dark room. Her breathing had finally slowed to normal. Are you okay? He asked, turning to look at her. Minji nodded. Yes, better than okay. She touched his shoulder where 4 small marks showed where her fingers had dug in. Did I hurt you? Nothing that won't heal. Jun smiled a little. You weren't kidding about the burning being intense. I warned you. She looked away, almost shy now. Wan are not gentle during mating time. I noticed. Jun sat up slowly. His whole body ached, but in a good way. So, is it over now? The burning. Not completely, but the worst has passed. Minji checked her wrist device. My readings are more normal now. We will need to connect again, but not with such urgency. Jun nodded. A crash of thunder shook the house. Storm still bad, he said. Probably another day at least. They were quiet for a while, listening to the wind. I didn't expect this, Minji finally said. What part? All of it. Crashing here. Finding you. The compatibility. She turned to face him. In all our studies of humans, we never guessed we could be so compatible. Was it just biology? June asked. Just the burning. Minji touched his face. No, not just that. The burning creates need, yes, but it doesn't create feelings. June took her hand. It felt cool now, not burning hot like before. You know, on Earth, people usually get to know each other a bit more before all this. Minji laughed. It was a nice sound like small bells. On Juan Prime too. This is not normal for me either. Jum Kim. June's stomach growled loudly. They both laughed. I guess saving an alien from death makes a man hungry, he said. Let's find something to eat. In the kitchen, they cooked by the light of emergency lamps. Minji moved differently now, more relaxed, more graceful. She hummed a strange tune as she helped cut vegetables. What's that song? June asked. A children's song from my world. About the stars and how they guide us home. She looked at him. You are very different from what I was taught about humans. How so? We were told humans are selfish, dangerous, quick to fear what they don't understand. She stirred the pot of stew. You're none of those things. Some humans are like that, Jun said. Not all of us. They ate at the small kitchen table. The wind still howled, but it seemed less important now. What happens when your people come for you? June asked. Minji put down her spoon. I don't know. I broke many rules by leaving the ship, by making contact with you. Will you be in trouble? Yes, but I have information now that could be valuable. About human-Juan compatibility. She looked down at her food. They might forgive me if the information is useful enough. And if not, I could lose my position, maybe be banned from research. She looked up at him. Would that be so bad? To stay here? Jun didn't know what to say. It was all happening so fast. Let's not worry about that now, he finally said. We have time to figure things out. The storm will last another day at least. Minji nodded. On my world, we have a saying. Storms bring change. I never understood it until now. Later, they sat on the couch wrapped in blankets. The emergency lights made soft shadows on the walls. Outside, the wind began to sound less angry. Tell me more about cowboys, Minji said, her head on Jun's shoulder. What do you want to know? Everything. About the horses, the wide open spaces, the freedom. She looked up at him. The way they lived by their own rules. Jun smiled. Well, it all started a long time ago, back on Earth. 2 weeks passed after the storm. Life on the ranch fell into a new pattern. Minji learned to ride better each day. She helped with the horses and even cooked meals from her world using Jun's food supplies. They were happy. The burning had passed completely. Minji's body returned to normal, though she still enjoyed being close to Jun. This was different. This was by choice, not need. One morning, they rode horses to check fences on the far side of Jun's land. The day was clear and warm. Race you to that big tree, Minji called, urging Pebble into a trot. She had become a good rider. Jun smiled and let her get ahead. He watched her blue skin shine in the sunlight. Just as he was about to speed up Sook to catch her, something flashed in the sky. A ship, much bigger than Minji's escape pod. It was coming down fast. Minji, look, he pointed up. She turned and saw the ship. Her face changed. Fear. She rode back to him quickly. It's them. A Juan research vessel. Her voice shook. They've come earlier than I expected. Is that bad? Yes. They shouldn't be here for another month at least. Something's wrong. She grabbed his arm. We need to get back to the house. They rowed hard, but the ship was faster. By the time they reached the ranch, it had landed in the big field near the house. It was sleek and dark, about the size of 3 of June's barns put together. A door opened in the side of the ship. 3 Huan stepped out. 2 looked like guards, with black uniforms and weapons at their sides. The one in front wore a silver uniform with many symbols on the chest. "That's Dojin," Minji whispered. "My superior officer. He never leaves the main ship for planet visits. This is very bad." They rode up and dismounted. June stood tall next to Minji. "Research Specialist Minji," Dojin said in perfect English. His voice was cold. "You have violated protocols. You will return to the ship immediately." Minji stepped forward. "Commander Dojin, why are you here so soon? The survey route was changed due to your actions." Dojin looked at June with eyes that glowed orange, not blue like Minji's. "You exposed yourself to a native. Worse, you engaged in biological contact." "How do you know that?" Minji asked. "Your pod systems continued to transmit data. We know everything." Dojin turned to the guards. "Secure the human for testing." The guards moved toward June. He stepped back, hand moving to the small laser pistol on his belt. "Stop." Minji moved between them. "He saved my life. The burning came early. I would have died without his help." Dojin's eyes narrowed. "The burning? Impossible. Your cycle was not due for 2 more years. Check the data from my medical device." Minji held up her wrist. Something in this planet's atmosphere triggered it early. Dojin waved a small scanner over her wrist. He looked at the results, his orange eyes widening. "This changes things." He looked at June with new interest. "Human, you are compatible with Wan biology." June nodded. "Seems that way." Dojin turned to one of the guards. "Contact the main vessel. Tell them we need a full research team here." To the other guard, he said, "Set up a base camp. We'll be staying." "What's happening?" June asked Minji quietly. "I don't like this," she whispered back. "Dojin never shows this much interest in any species." Dojin turned back to them. "This compatibility is unexpected. Valuable. The Council will want to know more." "The Council?" June asked. "The Wan ruling body," Minji explained. "They direct all research and expansion." Something in how she said expansion made June uneasy. "Your name, human?" Dojin asked. "June Kim." Dojin nodded. "June Kim, your cooperation will make things easier. We need samples tests. Your planet has just become much more interesting to us." The way he said it sounded like a threat, not a compliment. "What does that mean exactly?" June asked. Dojin smiled, showing sharp teeth. "It means New Laramie may be suitable for integration into the Wan collective." Minji gasped. June looked at her face and knew this was very, very bad news. That night, June and Minji whispered in the kitchen while Dojin and his guards set up equipment outside. "What does integration mean?" June asked. Minji's face was grim. "It means they take over. Slowly, first as helpers and partners. Then they control everything. Humans would become workers, second-class citizens on their own world. Like slaves. Not exactly, but not free either." Minji looked out the window at the Wan ship. "I never thought. I was told we only integrated dying worlds or failing colonies to help them. New Laramie isn't failing. We're doing fine. I know that now, but the reports sent back to the Council." She shook her head. "They were changed, made to sound like humans needed guidance." June hit the table with his fist. "We need to warn people. Town's 3 days' ride from here. Dojin won't let you leave. He'll say it's for research safety, but really he wants to control who knows they're here." They fell silent as a guard walked past the window. "The research vessel," June said suddenly. "The big one. Where is it?" "In orbit. This is just a shuttle. So there are more Huan up there." Minji nodded. "About 50. scientists, guards, crew. June fought hard. I have a comm unit in the barn. Old military model. Strong enough to reach town, maybe even the colony capital, if we can get to it. They'll be watching us. Not at dawn. June smiled a little. That's when I always feed the horses. They won't think it's strange if I go to the barn. They made a plan. It was risky, but they had no choice. At dawn, June went to the barn as usual. The guard watched but didn't follow. Inside, June quickly found the comm unit hidden under old saddles. He sent a message to Sheriff Han in town, explaining everything. Then he sent another to the Colonial Defense Force in the capital. Please believe me, he whispered as he hit send. Please. He hid the comm unit again and went about feeding the horses. When he returned to the house, Dojin was waiting. Your barn is quite interesting, the commander said. So many tools, so many places to hide things. June's heart sank. Had they found the comm unit? Just taking care of my animals, Jun said. Of course. Dojin smiled his sharp smile. Today we begin tests. On both you and Minji. To understand this, compatibility. The tests were long and painful. Blood samples, skin samples, scans. By evening, June was tired and sore. Minji looked even worse. This is just the beginning, Dojin told them. Tomorrow we investigate neural patterns. As night fell, they heard engines. June looked out the window and saw 3 trucks coming fast across his land. Sheriff Han was in the first one, with 5 deputies, all armed. Trouble, June told Minji. The truck stopped a safe distance away. Sheriff Han got out with a bullhorn. This is colonial law enforcement, her voice boomed. Unidentified visitors must register with colonial authorities. Come out with hands visible. Dojin looked furious. You contacted them. Guess your jammers didn't work, Jun said. The commander grabbed a weapon from his belt. This changes nothing. When our main vessel arrives tomorrow, your primitive weapons will be useless. Sheriff Han's voice came again. You have 1 minute to comply. Dojin raised a small device. If I press this, my ship will fire on those vehicles. Minji stepped forward. No, there's been enough deception. She turned to June. The Huan Council doesn't know what Dojin has been doing. The false reports, the rushed integration plans. He's breaking our laws too. Silence. Dojin pointed his weapon at her. That was enough for June. He tackled Dojin hard. They fell to the floor, fighting for the weapon. Minji grabbed the small controller from Dojin's hand as it fell. The guards rushed in. Sheriff Han and her deputies moved closer. Stop, Minji shouted. She held up her wrist device. I'm sending the truth to the Huan Council right now. All of Dojin's lies. All the real data about humans. Dojin froze. You wouldn't dare. Minji pressed buttons on her device. I just did. 3 months later, Jun sat on his porch watching the twin suns set. So much had changed. He still couldn't believe it all. After Minji sent the truth to the Huan Council, things happened fast. Within a day, a new Huan ship arrived. Not a research vessel, but a council ship. Dojin was arrested for breaking Huan laws, false reporting, unauthorized integration plans, illegal testing on sentient beings. The council representatives were different from Dojin. They apologized to the colonial governor. They promised peace talks. Real ones, not tricks. Minji became a hero to both sides. The Huan valued her honest data. The humans valued her warning about Dojin's plans. Now she worked with the colonial government as the first official Huan ambassador to humans. The screen door opened behind Jun. Minji walked out and sat beside him. Long day? He asked. She nodded. The trade agreement took hours to finish, but it's good. Fair for both sides. No more talk of integration. No, the council was shocked by what Dojin planned. That's not how we're supposed to meet new species. She took his hand. How was your day? Good. Taught 3 new colonists how to ride. The horses behaved. The agreement with the Huan had brought new settlers to New Laramie. People wanted to be part of the first human-Huan cooperation. June's ranch had become famous. Now he taught riding lessons and led tours. The governor called. Minji said, "The Huan medical team wants to study the burning more. They think it might be the key to helping both our species." How so? The burning is hard on Huan. The compatibility with humans might lead to treatments that help both of us. She looked at the stars coming out. They also want to know if human Huan children are possible. Jun raised his eyebrows. Are they? Maybe. The genetic tests look promising. She squeezed his hand. Would that bother you? Being part of those studies? Not if you're there too. A comfortable silence fell between them. In the distance, horses moved in the field, peaceful shapes against the darkening sky. What does your family think of all this? June asked. Back on Huan Prime. They're surprised, but happy I'm safe. She smiled. My mother wants to visit. Here, on the ranch. Is that okay? June laughed. Sure. Might be a bit simple for her, though. She'll love it, just like I do. Minji leaned against him. The council offered me a promotion. Lead researcher for all human Huan projects. That's great. I turned it down. June looked at her, surprised. Why? It would mean leaving New Laramie. Leaving here. She gestured at the ranch, the horses, the wide sky. Leaving you. You give up a promotion for this. For me. Without question. She stood and pulled him up. Come on. Let's ride before it gets too dark. They saddled Sook and Pebble. The horses were used to night rides now. As they rode side by side across the field, the first stars reflected in their eyes. The Huan have a saying, Minji said as they rode. The universe brings souls together for a reason. And what reason did it bring us together? June asked. To change everything. She smiled at him. For both our peoples. In the capital city, delegates from Earth had arrived to meet the Huan Council representatives. The news was spreading across human space. Humans had met aliens, and for once, the story wasn't about war or fear. It was about connection, understanding, maybe even love. And it had all started here, on this small ranch on a frontier world, when a blue alien woman in the burning had told a human cowboy she wanted to ride him like a pony. The universe, it seemed, had a strange sense of humor, but also a strange kind of wisdom. As they rode back to the ranch house under the stars, June and Minji weren't just two people anymore. They were the beginning of something new, something neither of their species had ever imagined possible, something wonderful.